Hey, y'all, and welcome to another edition of the Unscripted Huddle, brought to you by the National Football Alliance. The NFA's purpose is to honor, improve, and advance the sport of tackle football. If you're the parent, coach, or administrator of a youth or high school player, you're in the right place. We aim to deliver an authentic voice regarding performance, safety, and the medical truth to support you and your players. My name is John Reagan. With me is Joe Rafter. Let's kick it.
Welcome back to another edition of the Unscripted Huddle. My name is Joe Rafter, CEO and founder of the National Football Alliance, joined again by my partner in crime, Mr. John Reagan, and our esteemed guest. I'll let John kind of tee us up with an introduction to Coach. John, it's been a while. How have you been?
Joe. Doing great, and I appreciate that. Partner in crime. I'll do the crimes, you do the time. How about that? Does that work out okay? I don't want to be involved in any of that nonsense that you're getting yourself into. But man, I'm excited to be here. It has been a while. I think last time we were together, we maybe been talking to Coach Herman, and I am really fired up about tonight. We've got and I will say this, I'm going to use like some Ivy League words tonight, Joe. I'm trying to impress Coach Surace here.
Lots of SAT words tonight, Coach.
There's a lot of SAT words, a lot of syllables. I might add some that don't even truly exist. But we are welcoming Coach Bob Surace with us tonight. Coach, I appreciate you taking the time to join us. Coach Joe, so our listeners here, I think this is going into 17th year as the head coach, 16th season because of the COVID season. The Ivy League took the year off. 17th year, almost 200 all-Ivy players he's coached. Amazing. 4 Ivy championships. Been the head coach since 2010. He's had 10, depending on side of the ball, or special teams player of the year players. He has has 4 Bushnell Cup Award winners, which is literally all players, both sides of the ball, special teams player of the year in the Ivy League. Coach of the NFL, O-line guy, probably why I have such an affinity here, and just numerous of other opportunities coaching the CFL and back at his alma mater. So, Coach, welcome to the show tonight. How's that for an intro? Did I do all right?
I love you, and if I had an agent, I'm hiring you.
All right, here we go. I'm in. You just let me know when. I'm in. Man, I'll tell you, we're excited you're with us. Kind of what we want our listeners to hear every time we first get going. So first down here is kind of just tell us, I'm sure that the decision to go to Princeton wasn't, hey, I'm going to coach football for the rest of my life. I'm ready to go to Princeton University. But you're coaching at your alma mater. There's got to be a story that you can tell us of how you kind of got involved in coaching, but taking it back, how you ended up in Princeton and now the head coach.
Yeah, my dad was my high school football and baseball coach, and as you guys have been in football and coached, there's probably very few professions where kids can grow up with their dad in his employment. And I was at every practice. I was the bat boy in baseball, statistician, manager, water boy. I had every job for the time I was knee high. Rode on the buses, all the team dinners, all my dad's meetings, team meetings, coaching meetings. So I knew sports was an avenue I wanted to pursue. I didn't want to visit Princeton as a undergrad. I was they call it imposter syndrome now. I didn't think I fit. I was Millville High School, Southern New Jersey, public school. I'm not going to connect with anybody there. And high school coaches work with guidance counselors, and my guidance counselor was the one who worked with the football players. And she told my dad she quit. She wouldn't work with them anymore. I had to visit. And from there, take it from there. And I went up on the trip to Princeton. It was completely the opposite of what I thought it was going to be. I fit in with the guys. They were not aliens. They were normal. They were football guys. I ended up playing with a number of them that played in the NFL that way. The quality of play was much higher than I thought it was going to be. And these are my lifelong best friends, the guys you have in your weddings and, all those fun things that way. While I was at Princeton, about junior year back then, you meet with Steve Urbit, who's still at Princeton 40 years later.
Yeah.
He's the one who would talk about careers. And Verbs, and I sit down, I said, I want to coach. And the PG version is, he's like, why do you want to do that? I was like, because I want to be in sports. I want to be, I don't want, and I didn't know if it was coaching or the administrative side. And so my dad slept on the couch for like a month. And my mom's like, my dad went to Westchester, which is an amazing school. But she's like, you could have went to Westchester. Your buddies are doctors and lawyers and businessmen.
Right.
She's crying as I told her what I was going to do. My dad, I think, silently was very proud, but he had to contain that. So he'd get off the couch after about a month. That way, our linebacker coach at the time, Mark Harriman, went to Springfield, and he connected me with Mike DeLong. I interviewed there, got the job. Springfield is just a haven for coaches, administrators, teachers, trainers. Like, it is an amazing place, and really fit my, what I wanted to do. I still didn't know which side I wanted to go on. I had great teachers there, Dr. Murray, Dr. Billick, and at the end of my first year, I had to make a decision, and I had a chance to go into the administrative side. In the NFL with Washington, their GM, Charlie Casserly, was a Springfield guy, and the teachers there really wanted me to take that. I'd been working, and you guys might be old enough to remember, they used to have offense, defense camp and contact football camp.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, those camps. And my offensive line coach, Craig Cason, was the head administrator for contact football camp. Don Brown was the head coach on the college side, Jim Garrett on the pro side. And
wow.
I just absolutely love that. I wanted to be in coaching, and Coach Cason said they were expanding the camps. I could run the one in Chicago, the one in Toronto. And from there, it was, full speed ahead with coaching. And then, got very lucky with different jobs I had. Got to the NFL. One of my college teammates, John Garrett, called me, said he got promoted and they're looking for a guy like me. John almost became the head coach at Princeton. So we had always been friends, but we were reconnected on a deeper level because I was going to go with him as an assistant. He didn't get the job, but we stayed in close contact. I go interview with the Cincinnati Bengals, get the job somehow because I couldn't have been worse in the O-line portion of the interview. But my wife didn't want me to go. I was the head coach at Western Connecticut, Division III school that we had done very well at. And she was a school administrator and the head soccer coach at Staples High School in Westport. And when I got home and told her, we got to talk, she opened up, back then there wasn't Google or anything like that. She opened up an actual map and she said, it's on the left side, we're not going. And Cincinnati, Ohio happened to be on the right side. I, ended up being there. And the thing I told her was, as good as we were in Western Connecticut, I think we were 18-3 in my 2 years as head coach. I'll never get hired at Princeton. I need more experience. I need more mentorship, all those things. If I go to the NFL, there's a chance I get my PhD and I'll at least get strong consideration. And 8 years later, I got interviewed and hired at Princeton.
Wow. Coach, I got to ask you, so what was your last year in Cincinnati?
2009.
2009. So his rookie year, you had one of my guys that I could coach at Kansas, Anthony Collins.
Anthony Collins, yeah.
Yeah, AC.
Yep, AC.
Oh, wow. That was one of my heartbreaking moments, Joe. He was a junior. We played in the Orange Bowl in 2008, and I had talked to him. He was debating. He was a finalist for the Outland Trophy. He was one of 3 finalists. He was a defensive lineman. Had nothing coming out of high school. Was going to come back. Had a conversation. I think the AD at the time at Kansas got involved in the conversation. He called me about 2 days later. It was the last AFCA convention in Anaheim, the very last one. And I'm in Anaheim, and he calls me and he says, "Coach, I'm not coming back." I'm like, "What?" I mean, I'm there celebrating an Orange Bowl win. I think we finished, 4th or 5th in the country. Had a great year. I'm living the high life, and he says, I'm not coming back. I'm going in the draft. And I find out, a month later, it was because of a conversation he had. I was like, oh, but you guys benefited. He did. He benefited from y'all because you guys had a great offensive line situation at that point in time. Classic O-line coach there in Cincinnati.
Yeah, Paul Alexander was a great mentor for me, and phenomenal. And AAC, he probably would have benefited from a weight room standpoint coming back.
Oh, no
doubt. He was long, he was, technically, but I think we got him in about the fourth round, if I have that nailed.
Yeah, you did.
On
Fourth
that.
round draft pick.
But he had a good chance to be a higher pick if he came back. Because he needed some time to develop, and fortunately, we ended up cutting him, but we had Willie Anderson, who's going to go to the NFL, and Andrew Whitworth as our tackles. Wow. And so, he ended up, having a chance to compete and play and do all that eventually. But, he walked into a situation with two strong veterans.
So Western Connecticut, coach. Sorry, John.
Go ahead, Joe. Yeah, go ahead.
Western Connecticut. So, coach, in our preamble, I told you I'm an amateur football coach. I'm an amateur football player too. I played at Catholic University in D.C. and we used to play Western Connecticut a little before the time I think you were there. 18-3. That's a. What do you attribute some of your successes there to?
Well, the first guy I called when I got the job, and somebody John will know, is Paul Pasqualoni. And the only other coach who had a winning record there was Paul Pasqualoni. I think he was the only guy who ever had a winning season when I got there in 1996. John Servino had a few winning seasons when I got there as the offensive coordinator. And Paul was amazing. He was so supportive, and he wanted so deeply. One of his best friends was our AD, Ed Farrington. And I called Coach Pasqualoni, and I'm like, Bob Surace, and just any advice. Coach P goes, you get the linemen from Connecticut. They're loyal. And he goes, but the speed's got to come from New York and New Jersey. Get the speed from over there. And I'm doing a terrible imitation of Coach P's voice, but what a blessing to have him, as somebody to occasionally lean on, and all the success he had there. But we really did a great job recruiting. We got guys who fit. We had guys who loved football. And I think sometimes that's half the battle at the Division III level, is getting guys because, they have no reason to play other than their brothers, and the fact that they love football. And so we got the right guys. We had a terrific staff. I was so raw and young and inexperienced. I didn't know which way was up. But some ways that's good because it allowed us to experiment, and our AD, our administration, was so supportive and wanted to be good at football. And that's, in Division III, if you have the admissions and the financial aid and alignment, you got a decent chance to be good. And we had some tremendous administrators that supported football, and we did a great job. We brought in so many recruits, and at the time they were really hunting to get more male students on campus. So it was a great match.
That's cool, John. I jumped a question there. I got a little excited with the Western Connecticut connection.
That's right. We're still in first down. There's been a couple flags thrown here. Because I got to tell you. So he brings up Coach Pasqualoni, and obviously, Coach Pasqualoni was my head coach the second half of my career at Syracuse, and we used to refer to. Really, actually, my senior year, and then moving on when I stayed on as a GA for 1 year, we used to refer to Syracuse as not Western Connecticut, but Connecticut West, because at that point in time, it was Coach Pasqualoni, George DeLeon, God rest his soul, who is my mentor, was our offensive line, our offensive coordinator, and is a Connecticut guy. Chris Rippon was on our staff as a linebackers coach, and he had been a Western Connecticut guy. I think Kevin Coyle was at Connecticut with those guys at some point in time, and Dennis Goldman, who you hired at one point.
Dennis, who we hired.
Dennis was Kevin, a Connecticut. All these guys were Connecticut guys, and then they go And to make it even more so, they hire Steve Adazio, who was the head coach at Staples High School, to come in and be the tight ends coach,
Yep.
who obviously went on and
Yep.
was in college football in the NFL for a long time.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. And Kevin worked with me with the Bengals there. And
Oh, that's
I went up
right,
to
yeah.
Syracuse. I was an assistant coach. I go up to Syracuse, and Paul was always so generous. And you sit in with Coach DeLeon, who is just amazing. But and back then the playbooks, they weren't really on computers. He had photocopied a playbook and gave it to us. I've never seen an offensive playbook this thick. Like John, you must be the smartest player in the world. You must have had 8,000 calls, because I mean the playbook was a binder. It was huge.
Coach, knowing the calls was the only reason that I played for 3 years, because otherwise I wouldn't have played. I wasn't athletic. I mean, my backup for 2 years was a 10-year NFL vet, because he was a hell of an athlete and I wasn't. All right, Joe, I'm going to take us into second down. I'm going to kind of shift this into recruiting now, because this is one of the things I was excited when you were coming on, because you've been in college football, you've been in pro football, but you've been in college football a lot of different ways. You've been there as an assistant coach, you've been there as a head coach, you've been there as a player, but you're also there as a dad. With that, kind of talk about that recruiting process from all those perspectives, and how now it's a major change, right? It's a big change of what's going on now in recruiting, even in the Ivy League, and how has all that kind of changed for you?
Yeah, I always say, when they're trying to fix college football right now and get it back in a little better alignment, they don't need the people who are on the committee who screwed it up. They need guys like you, John, who coached Ivy League, Power Four, or whatever we called it back then. Guys like me who went through it as a parent and, as a coach. That I think we have a lot more maybe common sense and not greedy type decisions that are maybe self-serving. But, I always say this, like, when there's issues and things, change is inevitable in coaching. In my time at Princeton, it's never changed more than the last 5 years, in that either they can put me on one of those committees and maybe I can help make the change, which isn't likely. I'm not a commissioner of a conference or president of a university, or you can adapt to the change. And I think the Ivy League is about as well positioned as it's ever been. We just had Princeton has this huge reunions and 30,000 alums come back. We have this football event with about 600 of our former players are at it. And, they're all asking me, could I have played now? And I'm like, recruiting, I said, I can't recruit myself, because with the advent of football has a red shirt rule, now maybe the 5-for-5, and we don't cut anybody. We don't bring transfers in. So we have to develop our players. And, when you guys watch us this year, or John, you get to practice. Watch our own line. Those guys are going to grad transfer, maybe go to the draft. I've advised them all to get agents and think about the portal after the season, because the money in the portal for offensive linemen that aren't very good players is there. And every one of these guys turned down hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars in the offseason to get a Princeton degree. And if they develop in the way that, the spring went, the summer's going to go, these are great kids. They're going to be talking about mid 6-figure, low 7-figure grad transfer type salaries as O linemen, because you can't find O linemen in the portal. And we have a amazing group. And so we are really pushing. And I think we are at the front end of it, but everybody in the Ivy League's doing this now. We are so well positioned because we're going to develop guys. They're going to get degrees from these amazing institutions if they get injured, if they don't develop. If you don't develop at Syracuse, and I'm not knocking Coach Brown or anybody else, but they have to cut them and bring somebody else in, right? They don't give them time. And offensive linemen, especially defensive linemen, need time. The skill guys, maybe not so much. They're maybe more because of their speed or athleticism. They don't need the physical maturity. But man, this is such a huge bonus that now, if they are good enough, schools are going to be connecting with them for this last year, pay them more than they would have got their first few years. That way, if they're not good enough, they're going to go to Wall Street or commercial real estate or law school and be very successful. So the other thing is we have a locker room. I don't know, like, if John, you've ever coached at a place, or Joe, where there was no locker room. You know, 60 guys get cut or leave because they're disgruntled, and 60 guys come in. We start with 27 freshmen and we end with 27 freshmen. So they're building friendships, all the great things that we got out of football. So I don't know. I talked to some of my friends at the Group of Five and some places like that, and like the Penn job was open. I'm like, well, why aren't you going after this? And they got a great coach and Coach Santos, but
Right.
why aren't, like, that's a more attractive job in my opinion than dealing with the only reason kids sometimes go to a Group of Five school is to be good enough to get to the next school, that way.
All right. So, Joe, this is going to be all of us, a question for all of us. So if this doesn't count as a down, we're still on second down here. Coach brings up the locker room. Your favorite, Joe, Bob, I'll give you a minute, but I'm putting Joe on the spot. Your favorite locker room moment as a player or as a coach, doesn't matter. Favorite locker room moment. Or most memorable or something there.
So as a coach, 3 years ago, back at my high school alma mater, we went into a state championship game, and I was just I was an assistant coach on the JV team. But we had a great senior class, just a really good group of kids, and we were going in against a team that we were far outmatched. Archmere Academy was playing Caravel in the state of Delaware, and we lost them in the regular season. They were far and away, way more talented. But I shared some words in that locker room. And this is the first time I'd been back in my high school since I graduated college. I graduated college in '92. I coached for 2 years back in my high school then. And I was out of my mind, like, emotionally. And they caught it on video, and it made the highlight reel for the end of the season. But the thing I loved about it was, I said to the guys, I want you to show the world how much you love each other. So I say, great, the best men I've ever known do two things. They know how to punch and hug. They can do both. I said, show the world, show the opponent how hard you punch, and show the world how much you love each other. Because that's what it was all about. It was just guys going out playing for each other. It wasn't about the outcome or any of that kind of stuff. And man, I teared up. I mean, I'm a Coach Surace. I'm a super emotional guy, and I'll never forget that speech ever. As a player, we went. I was at Archmere again. This is high school. We were. And Archmere, coached little, small, private Catholic school in northern Delaware, 500 students, half of them are girls, half of them are boys, right? So, and we went my senior year, we were 9-0, playing a school by the name of Delcastle, which was a VOTEC school at the time in the state of Delaware. So here you have this private Catholic, white collar kind of a school playing this blue collar school. And they were 8-0-1. We were 9-0, and we whooped them 32-0. I mean, we kicked their ass up and down the field. And at the end of that, man, I was so fired up because nobody respected us. Nobody gave us any chance to beat the VOTEC school, and we got it done. So I got 2, John.
Wow. Yeah, that's all right.
What about you?
Coach,
Oh,
Coach,
me?
are you
Okay.
ready? I'll let you go.
Oh, I'm ready. So I'll give you 2 as well. I was thinking about this, and my junior year, we have this huge win. And locker room celebrations, because it's hard to win. and you put so much into it, and you don't play a lot of games. This isn't, I played baseball, and you play so many more games than a football season goes. And it was against Yale. And we are jumping up and down, dancing. We had one of those old school, this is 1988 boom boxes. And, you got the disc, the tape in. And we are dancing and celebrating. And the head coach comes in, and he's with this older, distinguished looking gentleman. Happens to be George Shultz, the Secretary of State at the time. And, it was about his 35th reunion. I told this story at reunions because my friends were all entering our 35th. I'm like, I can't have old people speak because of this story. And we get on a knee, and we are paying no attention as he's probably giving this amazing speech. And then he gets done. He is walking out of the locker room, and one of our guys puts the tape back in, blasts the music. We start dancing again. Nobody had a care in the world. This guy was like third in command of the United States of America. But that's how locker rooms are. And sometimes you don't read the room as a head coach. I've done the same thing. But now I'm the age of, to our players is the Secretary of State. The other one was I was coaching in the CFL. I don't even know how I got there. I'm 25 years old. I don't know anything. Tight ends are moving to get better alignments. Like we had all this crazy fancy stuff. And Forrest Gregg is the head coach.
Oh, wow.
And Forrest Gregg is one of the most amazing offensive lineman. He went to a Super Bowl with the Green Bay Packers as head coach, in addition to the championships he won as a player. And we were terrible. We got killed. The game ends, and he is laying into us, coaches, players, everything else. And at the end, he sees this trash can, and he's like, "You guys are trash." And he picks it up, and there's spit cans and all, and he throws it was like, he was right. I was like, this is Forrest Gregg, and he nailed it. And it did spur us on to play a little better, I think, and practice better. But man, I'll never forget the trash flying and tobacco spit and everything else on each everybody. We got good showers after that one.
It's funny you talk about those locker room moments. There's a kid, I don't know if you remember Jeff Gibbs, who was an offensive line for us at Penn. But Jeff played 3-year starter, 4-year player at Penn, and he grabbed me the other day living down here in Austin, and he's like, "Hey, do you remember that talk you gave at halftime of the Brown game in 2016?" And I'm like, "No, not even a little bit." There's some of those moments that you just go to. I'll share this. There's two for me. One is a player, and it wasn't a true locker room moment necessarily, but it shares the sentiment. It was actually our postseason senior All-Star game. It was the first year ever, Section 2. I went to high school in Albany, New York, or just south of Albany, and it was the first ever Section 2 All-Star game. And my high school head coach, John Sodergren, was the head coach. I was on the team. Our center was on the team as a long snapper. Our quarterback was on the team, David Sodergren, his son, who ended up going to Union College and playing football and baseball. And Pete Kokoza was our wide receiver. And we won the game 7-0. The ball was snapped by our center. Quarterback threw a pass to our wide receiver, scored a touchdown. I was the long snapper. David Sodergren was the holder. Lance Sprinkle actually was our kicker for the game, all of it from Bethlehem Central High School. And this is the day after Thanksgiving in 1988. There was probably, it was packed. There was probably 75 people there at this game. And it was just one of those moments. And all of our teammates were there because it was the first ever All-Star game. And, all these guys were there. It just was, it was kind of one of those moments. It didn't even matter that we won. It's just that, hey, here we are, one last hurrah, right? As a coach, there's lots of them. There's probably like that moment, and Coach, you've been through it. There's that moment that's like for each thing that you think about, like this is the greatest, or this is the most memorable. There's kind of one of those moments, a lot of different places when you've got a 20+ year history. But for me, my highest and lowest moment came in probably within 30 minutes of each other. And I was at Temple. I think it was whew, it must have been 2003. I think it was 2003. It's 2 or 3. Coach Pasqualoni was the head coach who I'd play for. He'd offered me a job, decided not to go back because I swear, I told him, I said, listen, when I come back, I don't ever want to leave. I don't want to be chasing a career. I just want to, if I go back to Syracuse, I want to be there forever. Coach DeLeon was still the offense coordinator. Syracuse came down, played us. It was one of the last games in the vet, not the last game, but one of the last games in the vet. And we beat them. And after the game, I was just ecstatic, right? Here we are celebrating in the locker room. I walk in the locker room, and Coach P is there. He had sent somebody in to get me, and he was there just to say, hey, congratulations. And I said, well, where's Coach DeLeon? I went in the locker room. And he was literally sitting there just distraught by himself. And both of them, Coach P and Coach DeLeon, very emotional Italian, very stereotypical Italian, emotional, but passionate people about their players and the people around them. And he was just, I had never seen him just quiet, sitting, head down, always. I mean, here he was, probably 5'7.5". He would tell you he's 5'10", and standing tall, like standing 6'3". I thought he was probably 6 foot tall until I graduated college and started coaching. And just that high and low, you know, that what the game does. Joe, we talk about it all the time, right? What the game does to all of us. It can raise you up and it can humble you, and it did all of that in a matter of like 6 minutes, from a celebration to that. So it's a special game, really is.
I was texting with a guy named Adam Shire. He's at Florida State. He used to coach at Princeton before I was head coach, but his son's going to play for us. And somehow the conversation leaned towards, he couldn't remember any of his professors. He played at Dartmouth. And I said the same thing, but you can remember every coach from Pop Warner and Little League. Like, the coaches make such an impact, the good ones at least, make such a positive impact on you throughout your life. And when you said the story of the player who remembers every word you said to motivate and to inspire in the locker room, and you don't remember it, like, I say it to our coaches all the time. They'll remember everything we say, every moment, every pat on the back, every encouraging word, every time they do something wrong where we have to have a teaching moment. They remember every single one of those. And as coaches, you move on to the staff meeting, the video, all those things that you don't realize maybe all the time, the impact you have with your words. And the impact, this is 10 years later, it was 2016, where that young man remembers every word there. And he probably couldn't name, he was probably a Wharton and everything. He probably can't name his professors, but he remembers every word you said there. And it's just another great example of why you guys are doing this.
Yeah, they're just life lessons, Coach. You know, you just when you're put, you know, it's one thing to be cognitively intelligent and to spend a lot of time sitting in a classroom learning about whatever subject or whatever topic, but then when you're out on a football field and you're applying, you know, that same level of, you know, got to know your job, got to, you know your plays, know your snap count, know what to do, but then you're putting your heart and soul into it at the same time, and your body trying to, you know, make sacrifices for others. There's, you know, we talk about it all the time here. There's no sport like it in the world.
All right, Joe. So it's 2nd and 45 after 3 penalties here. And
this drive is going backwards. This is the worst drive we've ever had offensively on the unscripted huddle. We're just going backwards.
So Coach, with taking it, I mean, you mentioned earlier how recruited it was guidance counselor and coach. It's very different now, obviously, who's involved in a kid's life. You just went through it recently with your son, so certainly feel free to, because I mean, Joe and I talk about it all the time. Obviously, my son just went through it a couple of years ago, ended up at JMU, and so, but as your son was recruited, a very different process, because now NIL was involved. Now I'm sure you hear stories about rev share and all the other things that are involved. How is it affecting the student athlete now? How is it affecting the kid? How is it affecting a high school kid? And then since I need to not throw a flag on third down here already, since we're in third down, but how are you, I guess, insulated in the Ivy League a little bit from that, or is it still, because of recruiting, something you guys are in contact with all the time?
Yeah, fortunately, we were in a financial situation where he didn't have to base his decision on money. And I'm a coach, and just like you guys, where the good cultures were. And as a parent, the things you care about as you went through it, JMU has this great culture. You're not going to put your kid in a situation where it's not that. And I get it's a business, but there's also a cultural piece. And you kind of, your kids, the places they're going to fit. And you go visit them. It was a little bit different for my wife, the Power Four type thing, as opposed to maybe how we recruit in the Ivy League that way. But it wasn't that much different, because in the end, our kids want to see what we're about in terms of how do we develop them. Like, they're going to put all this time. They want to know how they're going to develop. They want to know who their friends are going to be, what the locker room is, all those things. And we did the whole process towards schools. It was the greatest thing ever for me as a coach, because a lot of times you'll go to a place and they don't give you all the answers. But when your son's a recruit, you can ask questions, you're going to get the answers, on that. So I try to balance that. My daughter would be on some of these trips. She gets so mad at me. It's not about you. I know it's not about me, but, this is on the side. We're walking to the next facility or whatever on that. He really fit. I think from the second on his first visit, and he probably, because we were so close to Rutgers, made about 30 visits, and Coach Shiano was up there, and he bought into everything he was saying. To this day, he'll call me and say, how'd it go, blah, 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 and he'll say something. I'm like, I said that, and you sat in my meetings. And he's like, Coach Shiano says it better. He absolutely, loved those pieces, and he really, really fit all those things. But it is different because their locker room changes more than an Ivy League locker room, and it's just the nature of the business that you have decisions being made that sometimes it's a player that isn't happy. And sometimes it's a coach who needs to move on from a player that way. But I do think, I wouldn't say we're insulated, because our hearts get broken. And I'm sure you experience this at Penn, John, that you recruit a kid, you love a kid, you put all this time into him, and Stanford walks in and offers them. And at that point, Stanford was free. There wasn't NIL when you're doing it. But now it's a Stanford walks in, and it's not just the degree of money. I look at those battles as ones that, unless the kid is adamant, we're not going to fight those ones. We're going to expend our time. But I tell our staff that there are very few JMUs out there where we should be facing an uphill battle in recruiting, just because of our ability to develop guys, get the degree, get the environment, do internships, and grad transfer, and experience that. So, I think right now we're operating more recruiting wise at a rock solid group of 5 level. The difference is they're operating at that level, but their starters very often are kids they brought in as transfers. And so they're older. Like, they're dealing with 23-year-old men. We got 18-year-olds starting, 20-year-olds starting, 22-year-olds. But I think our league's really grown with that.
Joe, Coach Surace talks about Stanford coming in and being heartbreaking. When I was at Penn, he already knows where this is going. When I was at Penn, it wasn't necessarily Stanford or Duke or Northwestern. Like, we would spend our soul on a kid from Florida or Texas or California, and then all of a sudden, other schools in the Ivies might be recruiting them, but they didn't necessarily have an opportunity. They didn't have an admission standard or admissions opportunity. And then all of a sudden, Tim Murphy from Harvard, or Tony Reno from Yale, or Bob Surace from Princeton would come and get involved. And we were no longer part of the discussion. You talk about heartbreak. The only thing we could pray on was that they wanted a undergraduate business school, and that Wharton might win the battle, because short of that, we were going to get heartbroken by HYP, by Harvard, Yale, Princeton, and it does. It's heartbreaking in one sense. It's also, it's hard in the Ivy League to be heartbroken, because you know that kid has success written all over him. And if you're in coaching for the right reasons, it doesn't matter where they end up. If they end up at one of those, you just feel good about it. It's the ones that go to Richmond and not knocking. It's not a knock. Yeah. It's literally like, there's not the NFL level in front of them from experience that make that decision. And you go, man, you could have been set forever with a 4-year sacrifice, if you could even call it that.
Yeah, it's Coach Surace. It's I mean, I spend so much time looking at the media and football and talking to coaches here about we talk a lot about NIL and kind of the current state of affairs. And John and I, for the most part, share the same opinion that the sport is being taken down a dirt road right now, and it's not the sport that we grew up playing. But what I hear what's going on at Princeton is just so refreshing, that there's still a developmental aspect in the sport where guys are coming in, they're putting the work in, they're committed, they're loyal to the team, to the coach, they're putting the team above themselves in ways that maybe isn't what you see all the time in the headlines of what's going on in the so many of the other schools. It's just great to hear that that's alive still, and because I think about the players today are the coaches of tomorrow, and if players right now are rotating around and just kind of flipping spots and flipping schools and trying to make another buck, what is the long-term effect of that mindset that's being installed in them through college football at some of the levels? When they go to coach, how's that going to translate? Because the coaches nowadays, like guys like yourself, grew up in a different sport with different rules and expectations, and so you're coaching from a certain point of view. These kids are growing up, and it's even in high school now. They're growing up with their hand out, looking to make a couple bucks while they play the sport. What's that going to look like at the when they become coaches?
Yeah, I think even now, I say this to our young coaches, especially, that as things are changing, stick to your own values. Because I don't know anybody that is in my age group that went into coaching that at least part of it was to make an impact, right? Probably the biggest part was to make an impact. And now it's become beyond professional football in a lot of ways. And I think when you hear the horror stories and when I coached in the NFL, there's a CBA. There's no CBA, where a young man comes off the bench and has a great game, and that's not enough. It's the agent calling the coach afterwards saying he needs to be paid more because he had that one good game. And, we're losing a little perspective of what college can be about. And, it's not about the jewelry or the cars or all those things that depreciate. And it was pretty interesting to me, the top 3 picks of the NFL draft, Fernando Mendoza, he was doing Ivy League camps, and most of us turned him down. Yale lost a guy. He ends up committing to Yale, and then he ends up going to Cal. He decommitted from Yale in January, and he's the Heisman Trophy winner. What a wonderful young man when you listen to him. The number 2 pick was David Bailey, who wound up at Stanford, who was long and lean, and most of the Power 4 didn't think he would fill out, and he ends up just growing into this, high pick and great pass rusher and player in college. The 3rd pick was Jeremiah Love. And if it was 2016 when we were recruiting him, we would have got him. Yep. And to the kid's credit, he is investing his money. He's not wasting his money. He still keeps in touch with our coaches. He got drafted, and an hour later, he sent our running back coach, who was tightest with him in the recruiting process, a thank you. And you root for guys like that. And if we can get more of these young men to understand and utilize their lessons. Like I look at, like, how is Jeremiah Love not on this commission to fix? It's pretty much football. Like
Yeah.
it's not water
It's the
polo.
driving
It's not.
force, so it is
It's the
football.
driving
Right.
force with all these things, and we need a guy like Jeremiah Love on there because he is doing everything right, and I root for that guy. I will root for him the rest of his career because that one broke our heart. But as you just said, John, there'll never be a time I don't root for that young man and
Right.
who he is and what he does. And I think it's really hard though, because I look back when I was 20 years old, I didn't have the maturity that Jeremiah Love had. So, and here I am at Princeton. My dad's a coach. I was raised with such great values. How are some of these guys who don't have maybe the structure in their lives that somebody like I had and was immature? How can we better do that? Because they are losing out on the connection you make, the relationships you make in football are second to none. It is the greatest team sport there is, in my opinion. And my dad, I've been at all of them. I grew up with a dad who was a coach who, I mean, he was the athletic director. I tag along to whatever match game was going on with him. And there's nothing like football. There's nothing like, I love how you call this, the unscripted huddle, but the word huddle, which nobody does anymore in college.
Right.
The unscripted no huddle. We call it the unscripted no huddle. We've all changed with that, but yeah, like that piece we had a guy on our team, Scott Gibbs, a wide receiver. We didn't throw the ball much. My senior year, we had Judd Garrett, was this great running back in the Ivy League. And before every drive, he would headbutt me. Now he'd be like put in jail for CTE or causing concussions. It wasn't like this, crazy headbutt, but it was like, let's go. And he headbutt the whole offensive line. And it wasn't like, this wasn't major head-to-head force. I'm joking about the other piece. But it was a memory, like we're in this together. That way. And I hope we're not completely losing that. I hope there's a way to put some of the toothpaste back in the tube and get back to that bonding.
With that, Coach, you say that. And the thing that's, when I sit back and think about the direction of college football, what's going on, obviously money is driving so much. And right, wrong, and different, it is. I mean, that genie is out, right? It's not getting shoved back in. It is out. The thing that hasn't changed is the level of success, the percentage of players that are going to make it from college football in the NFL doesn't change, right? It doesn't all of a sudden, because they're paying them, say, oh, you know what, 7% of the guys are going to make it. It's less than 3% of a Division I football player will play 3+ years in the NFL, right? Or more than 3 is actually the stat, right? So that number is not changing. And then you add to that story the number of NFL players that have played 4+ years, have pensions, and that are homeless and have no money and that are working day-to-day jobs like the rest of us in the world, right? They're getting paid and living paycheck to paycheck. And so money is driving it a different direction, but it's not changing it. Not in any positive way, unless that 1% that decides they're going to do something about it, because some of these players are now in the upper 1% of income in the United States as college freshmen, unless they figure it out. So, off my soapbox here for a second, Coach. Joe and I, Coach Rafter and I, just appointed you on the College Sports Commission to change college athletics. 2 things, the first 2 things that you would at least address. And if you know what the change would be, great. If not, what are the first 2 things that you would address?
Yeah, the first thing, I'd separate the Power 2 plus, meaning the SEC and the Big Ten.
The 65,
and,
whoever those are.
And then I would add, and maybe it's the whole Power 4 and Notre Dame, but I would separate those schools that are investing in football and men's basketball and women's basketball so much money that it's become pro. And we can call it whatever we want, but we were paying players. It's my son is getting paid to play football and get a degree. But the second
let
piece
them go do their own thing.
let them do their own thing. And look, Princeton men's lacrosse won the national title yesterday.
Right.
I keep hearing, if we do that, it'll be the end of Olympic sports and non-revenue sports. And I'm like, no, it won't, because I'm at Princeton, and we're I think the last ranking in the Learfield Cup, we were fourth. We don't get any points for football. We're fourth in that, and you can do it a different way and invest in them a different way without draining your budget. Because I'll use a third on this, because if you're going to have in at least two of the conferences $100 million going to those conferences, the individual schools, I should say, it's over $1 billion. But before they sell a ticket, there's $100 million. The money should be going to the football players. We played offensive line. Every play is a car crash, right? And it's safer now than it's ever been, but it's a collision every single play. I don't dispute at all the player. They should actually be getting more of the revenue share because of what they're putting their bodies through, the time spent, everything else. But in my opinion, that money should go to them after they graduate. It should be incentivized to be at one school. So if they transfer, they get less. And they're not spending it on things that depreciate or things that aren't successful, but put that money in a trust where it's raising value. They're getting more mature about how to invest money and use that. And then they'll have a degree. The educational piece will come back a little bit. It's not going to be Princeton. I'm saying that the Power Four schools are not going to have that type of academic experience, but they're going to learn how to manage their money. And if they wind up being that small percentage that gets 3 years in the NFL, they have this to fall back on until they get back on their feet, right? Or if it's the player who doesn't get to the NFL at all, which is the most of us, on
97%.
Yes. And if it happens to be the guy who plays in 10 years, that's great. It's just an additional thing. But let's really figure out ways to emphasize the academic piece a little more. That way, let's incentivize it. Let's incentivize staying, right, in terms of that. And if a coach doesn't want a guy, let's pay him more to leave. Let's give him a severance. If you don't want a guy and he winds up going from Michigan to Central Michigan, good. You don't want him anymore. Let's put a little more money in his trust, that way, because you're the ones who misevaluated him, and you've essentially cut him from, because he's going to lose credits. He's going to lose a lot because you cut him, and he's not disgruntled. He was told. So I think you do those things and you put the money on who's driving the revenue that way. If there was 2.5 things, that would be it.
It's interesting, the trust concept, something I've heard before, but explain the way you explained it. It's literally how old money stays in the family.
Yeah.
Literally.
Yes.
Like that's how it stays in the family. It's not because the great grandfather Kennedy says, here's your $2 million. It's because there's a trust set up that they have to learn how to use, and that there's advantages for not wasting and for being loyal and for learning life lessons, and then you're okay. It's really interesting describing it that way.
Yeah. No, I think that's a way, because what you don't want is the horror stories of players mismanaged by agents. The agents aren't regulated. Like, there's a number of things if I was on the commission,
Right.
but you have to regulate the agents, and so many of them. And look, we went through an interview process. There's a lot of good ones, and we were able to, as mature adults, figure out somebody who really fit our son, and he figured that out. But there were also some that didn't fit our values, and that's fine too. But I think if maybe there's a little more regulation, the conversations would have been a little more mature, on that.
Yeah, I think, Coach, that's the first time I had heard about the trust fund conversation. I think that's a brilliant pattern for preserving wealth. To John's point, that applying that to these college age kids, they're 18 years old. I don't care what background you come from. You're 18 years old. Someone's putting a couple $100,000 in your pocket. it's likely to be mismanaged.
Yeah. Now the hard piece is you're dealing with the law, and there's lawyers involved, and they're probably going to want the money going to the kid who's over 18 most of the time. There are schools who would not want football and men's basketball to get a larger piece of the revenue share.
Yeah.
That way, 20 million or 22 million, whatever it is right now, is eating their budget. But I do think there's things you can do to manage the money better. And look, I think that many of the other sports should be looking at the Ivy League model, which is incredibly successful. Princeton men's lacrosse isn't the only, sports team that had unprecedented success in the last 5-6 years. Like they're
Right.
dominating in this NIL era, that way because they got their things right. And they're not playing against teams who have $40 million budgets. So it's a little easier for them too. So on that.
All right, Joe.
Awesome.
I'm going to take us into fourth down here. We're going to go with a Mount Rushmore here, Coach. All right, but it's not going to be our normal Mount Rushmore. Normally just be, hey, tell me 4 great coaches, or who are the 4 coaches to be on. I want to know the 4 programs, okay, but we're going to go 4 different levels that you think are at the top of whatever level they're at. So the levels I would throw out there, but you can change them. It's your Mount Rushmore. Do it however you want to. NFL, Power 4, Group of 6 or anybody else. So not Power 4, FCS, anything else, including the Ivy League. So that gives you your out that you needed. And then a high school program. Now, if you want to change any of those, it's your Mount Rushmore. You can, whatever. But going 4 really different levels, and who are the greatest programs and why?
Yeah, the NFL, and my goodness, I had such admiration for the Pittsburgh Steelers and the New England Patriots. I'd probably go with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, I grew up an Eagles fan. I grew up in southern New Jersey. I was an Eagles fan, and I coached with the Bengals. So I've been trained to not say
To hate Pittsburgh.
Yeah, to not say that. But since I was able to put a game on the TV, they have had a consistency and success. I mean, for crying out loud, they just hired their 4th head coach of
Ever, right? Ever.
I mean,
Yes.
for the same ownership and the family-owned, thing, and the
And by the way, Mike
consistency.
Tomlin's one of the greatest human beings in this profession.
We recruited his son. So, man, I'm with the Bengals, and we could not beat them at home. We beat them actually in the old Heinz Field. We beat them at Heinz Field a few times. We couldn't beat them at home. Playoffs, anything. And this guy drove me nuts because they were so physical and disciplined and just had our number. And then we recruit his son. He comes on the visit, and he was dad. The entire time, he was just another dad, asking the questions dads ask, celebrating his son, who was both his kids, brilliant kids. And I had this perspective that this guy had every right to be, I know more than you. And he wasn't that way at all. He's asking me questions that I know he knows the answers to, but he just wanted to have a conversation as a normal person. And I will say that was wonderful. So,
Coach, I got to jump in on that recruiting piece because I was at Maryland. And we got his son, and he came on his visit. It's the first time I ever beat Princeton, Joe, in recruiting ever. First time ever I beat Princeton. I think we lost a kid at Rice to walk on it, or not walk on, but to go to Princeton. In all honesty, but Mike was on the visit, just like with his son on the trip, and he was asking me about my family. And I was like, oh, yeah, it was the first weekend in February. It was actually my son's birthday. And I, to this day, still have it. Thank God for iPhones. No plug there, Apple. But just I have a video. Mike Tomlin goes, hey, stop. No more stories. He recorded a birthday message to my son, Danny, on the spot, because it was his birthday. And, hey, this was family, and this is about family. And What
I
a
mean,
neat
those
family.
guys who do it so well for so long, they're
Right.
special guys. And I felt the same way. I left there and I'm like, I'm trained not to root for this team, but I'm going to root for Mike Tomlin and I'm going to root for him on NBC this year. I'll root for him if he goes back into coaching because
Right.
I just thought he was a first class dad in addition to being a great coach. And obviously, when I was in the league, in the NFL, the Patriots were just a step ahead, and their culture and how they did things was terrific. But I would tell you, I just admired how the Pittsburgh Steelers have been run over 50 years of my life.
Totally.
Right.
Um, Power Four, um, oh man, um,
It's really
I
changed.
can't.
I mean, the last
I
4 or 5
won't
years
say
has made it
Rutgers.
harder.
I will take Rutgers out of this because
Fair
that is a
enough.
nepotism, so and
Right.
bias, and I really enjoy the every trip I make up there. They are first class. Um, but I actually Matt Patricia played for me at RPI. Coached at RPI, and I was recruiting a kid in Columbus, and they just lost the Big Ten championship to Indiana in that 13-10 game, and I text him, I'm literally 4 miles away at this high school. If you're around, love to give you a hug. And it's not that they have the most gaudy facilities, but you don't need gaudy facilities. Sometimes that can be a detriment. Everything was perfectly aligned into the Woody Hayes Hall, Center there, or hall, whatever they
Mhm.
called it. Everything was, you walk in and you're treated first class. The people are so, the impression, the people at the front desk and the people you meet and you walk through there, they just lost a battle. One of those losses, like you said, Coach De Leon, you're pulling your hair out, and you could tell why they're such a well-run program. And it wasn't, we were, these trips with our son. Some places maybe the facility piece was too much. I would rather hear about the strength coach and who's the ones developing you and the people. And I was very impressed. Really reminded me a lot of and I know Coach Shiano coached at Ohio State. It reminded me a lot of what Rutgers guys were like. What was the third one? Was it Group of Five?
I say group of six or anybody
Or
else.
Group
You
of
can
Six?
go
I mean, yeah,
FCS if you want to. You can take
yeah,
wherever you want
yeah,
to.
yeah. Obviously, I'm not gonna. I'll take the Ivy League out, so I don't get anybody mad at me. And I got a bunch of guys.
I was giving you that. I was putting that one teeing up for you,
A
Coach.
bunch of guys that coach with me that are head coaches,
Sure.
and I'm certainly not gonna say us on that. But I've had this really good admiration for James Madison, and kudos to you. I just think, and literally, one of the points, the search firm called me, and I'm not leaving Princeton. Like, I don't have an agent, anything else. This was,
Right.
and but man, the alignment they have, and this was 10 years ago, 8 years ago, whatever it was, from top to bottom. I was just so impressed. And it was one of those, you go home and you think you're going to get brownie points with your wife because we'd had these talks that this is where we're raising our kids. We love Princeton. We love our friendships. I love coaching the guys in the alignment. But it was one of those, I thought I was going to get some more brownie points. And, she's like, how much more are they going to pay you on
Right.
that? And then she's like, she was joking. We're not like,
Yeah.
she is equally aligned and is a Princeton alum, loves the place. So, with that. And then, man, I get the good fortune in recruiting of, the best high school programs have good students, right? They have great students. And I've been, I don't want to break any rules violations
Sure.
on
Yeah.
this. But I don't even know if this is a rule violation. Is this a rule? The compliance. Is this a rule violation if I name a school on this?
Gotcha. No, it's not.
But
It's
it's
absolutely
not.
not.
Okay, good, good.
No.
I just wanted to make sure that I have your word on that.
Absolutely. Just send me to the compliance
But
officer. We're good.
yeah, I think that when you go into, and I'm going to say this as a state, you go into Texas and the commitment they have made to high school football, to youth football, and it is second to none. at those places. I love walking, just in there. Every single place has a recruiting coordinator. You know, it's hard. My dad was the recruiting coordinator. He was, a public high school in New Jersey. You have to do everything, and sometimes lines get missed, and it's not fair to the kids. These kids have put so much work to get to a good high school. Right down the road from us is the Hun School, and they are doing things really well on that, and they're rolling. But they're getting PGs. They're doing it a little bit different than those 4-year public schools. When I go
Hmm.
through Texas, Georgia is rivaling Texas. A lot of those schools are picking up that way. But man, I don't think there's been a year in my entire time, and I travel, like, I love recruiting. Like, when that time period comes, there's like, that's one thing about recruiting in the Ivy League, John. Every single place you walk in, and the parents are so appreciative that they might not choose Princeton, or an Ivy League school, but what this could mean for their family, that way. And I just love it. I gain about 30 pounds every winter because every parent, you eat
They want you to
whatever,
come to the
either.
house and they want to cook for you. Yeah.
Oh, it's either the best dish in their house, or the best, like, because I have a vowel at the end of my name, the best Italian restaurant in
Right.
that area. And you can't lose weight eating pasta, like, in bread, and it's impossible. And so I made a new rule. You'll like this one, that I will not eat dessert if the kid's committed. I will only
Okay.
desert if they're uncommitted. I still got to
Got
vet
it.
them. But if the kid's committed, I can't continue to put on all this weight. I'm getting older.
That's funny.
I there's limits on this. So I let the coaches know to tell if I'm with somebody, or I tell them, hey, no dessert. Like, let's take it easy on me on this. But yeah, I will say that region has been, it's bananas when you go from school to school. And I really enjoy doing recruiting down there.
Yeah, Texas. I mean, you know, John, I think you're going to have a bias on this one for Texas as a guy who lives in Texas. But I've gotten to know a little bit of Texas football over the past couple of years. I worked down there for a little bit and have had the pleasure of meeting a couple coaches down there. Texas does do high school and youth football extremely well, extremely well. It's built top to bottom.
Yeah. And it doesn't matter what region you're in.
Yeah,
Like, I never realized San Antonio was as good as they are. Like, I knew Austin was, I knew Dallas was, I knew Houston was, although Houston's a pain in the butt to navigate because the schools are so spread out. And I can get lost in Princeton going to the 7-Eleven. So
I
for
feel like
me,
just
that
city in the
one,
country makes it difficult too. So yeah.
uh, that's a very spread out, there. But my goodness, like, each one of those places. And the thing about Texas, they value education too.
Hmm.
It is rare where the best football players are not terrific students. Like, I am shocked that you walk into a school, and every year they got 5 kids that are that are capable of being very successful at the top schools in the country. That way, that's
No, I'm with you on
it's
that, and I would
different.
say that. I mean, obviously, I am biased, Joe, because it's always been home for me, whether I was living here or not. But the thing that you don't ever, they're not all Ivy League capable. Don't get me wrong; it's a different academic set. But you don't
Yeah,
ever walk into a school in Texas and go, "I hope he's eligible." Even when I was coaching in the Power Five, well, Power Four, whatever,
yeah,
in the Big 12 or in the Big 10, you never worried about, oh, is he going to be eligible? You knew that if he was that good a player, he was going to be taking care of business because they were going to make sure the eyes were on him, and they were going to make sure, and not by giving it to him, but make sure he was doing what he needed to do to be successful. Where you could walk into some other states, and again, we'll not mention them because I work in them as well, but that you got to go, okay, is this kid really going to make it? Am I going to be able, if we sign him, is he going to make it? And then is he going to be successful in the school? I agree with you. The alignment with education and football, or athletics in general, right? Not just football, but with education, and the vertical alignment there is very nice in the state. So,
agreed.
Well, Joe, I don't know what we think here. I know we're way overboard on a lot of things, and downs included, but I don't want to be too short.
This is our 5 overtime game here.
Somehow, John, you invented a 5th down today.
Wait, the 5 overtime game, that was a homecoming game too. No, it was just last game of the year, wasn't it, Bob? It was.
No, we didn't play 5 against Penn. We had one against
Was it
Harvard.
3?
It was controversial. I think we had 3 against you guys.
Because we threw a wheel route in the back of the end zone the year after or 2 years after, yeah. I had the worst single offensive game as a coordinator ever at Princeton in 2018 when he had the quarterback that was, he was an unbelievably phenomenal kid and great quarterback. Set the record for passing yards in the Ivy League, I think.
Yeah, 2018. 2016, you talk about 4 downs. We had a defensive back named Dorian Williams that made 3 4th down stops. There were 3 of the most amazing plays I've ever seen. That we had no right to make those stops against you guys. He was a great player, and that was probably the best game of his career.
2018.
Yeah.
That
was John Lovett, and
that was Lovett.
2018
that was at your place.
That was at our place. It was John Lovett, and he was just one of the.
19 was the year. Go ahead, Bob. I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say, Justin Watson, God bless him, was like runner-up for the Ivy League Player of the Year 3 times in a row. And he just ran into quarterbacks that the one year maybe the quarterback wasn't a record breaker, but he was a very good player. Yeah. And that award just, I don't know, there's no Outland Trophy in Ivy League. We don't give the offensive line anything.
Right.
But it's typically going to go to quarterbacks. But Watson was, oh boy, was he something else.
He was fun.
Our game plan one year, and I think it might have been 2017 maybe, we doubled him every play. And then we were losing, but it was close, and we decide we can't double him. And that very play, they draw something up, call it, boom, down the field. He beats us by 10 yards for a touchdown. I'd never seen a guy that wide open. It was the only play we didn't double him.
Joe, that was pure coaching.
Hey, you however that play was checked into, it was the only play we didn't put 2 guys on.
That probably was 16, because 17. I was trying to do the math in my head. 17 was the year we came to your place and you got annihilated by Lovett, and then 18 was the year that we pulled out the Ryan Glover, brought in the backup quarterback and ran the wishbone for half the game.
Yeah. Oh my God! The option was killing us.
Struggling.
Yeah, it was option into the boundary. You must have ran it a dozen times, and I probably averaged 15 yards a carry.
George DeLeon, count the numbers. Count the numbers, yep. George DeLeon. So, amazing. Joe, close us here. We got to go. We got to call it tonight. We don't let Coach Surace get back to his real life.
Coach Surace, super honored. Great pleasure to have you on here tonight. Listening to you 2 guys reminisce about things and share perspectives about this great sport it's been a real treat. I know I've enjoyed it. I'm sure our listeners will as well. And that's going to be a wrap for another edition of the Unscripted Huddle. Coach Surace, love to have you back maybe sometime next year. Want to wish you all the best with the upcoming season in 2026.
I appreciate it. Thanks, Joe and John.
Hey, Coach, my loyalties are gone because my staff is gone. I only got 1 P in my life now, and it's black and orange, so I can root for Princeton.
Come to practice. You're always welcome. So come to practice whenever you want.
Thanks for joining us, Coach.
Yeah, thanks, Sean. Thanks, Joe.
Well, that's it for this week. Let's keep the conversation going to help NFA honor, advance, and improve the game of football. Thanks for listening. And join us next time for another set of downs on the Unscripted Huddle.